My name is Wanda Wilson Rieff. The 5th and the 22nd of 1932 was the day I was born. I was born at Hubbard, Arkansas, 5 miles south of Prairie Grove.
And who were your parents?
My father was Charlie Wilson. My mother was Myrtle Wilson.
Okay, and tell me about your family.
I had my mother and father. I had an older brother, an older sister, and then another older brother, but my younger brother was 9 years old when I was born.
And what was his name?
My younger brother's name was Harold.
And your older brother?
Merle. And my sister's name was Ruby.
Okay. What was your family's business?
My dad was a farmer. We milked cows and just whatever was to do on a farm.
Okay.
We lived on the old Skelton home place. That's where I was raised. Uncle Bob Skelton, which is Guy Skelton's father. And I'm assuming Guy and them were raised there. I'm not sure.
Okay. What did you do to help the family?
What did I do? Well, I picked strawberries and I picked blackberries and I helped milk cows and I had chickens, little chickens that I would raise and all kinds of things.
What about around the house? How did you help out around the house?
Well, I would help Mother when she washed. We washed on a tub down at the creek. We would have a pot down there and heat the water on an open fire, and then we rubbed the clothes on a rub board. That was when I was young, very young. Then as we got older, we did get an electric washing machine, but that was in the 1940s.
Okay. What were some of the things your family did for fun?
Went to Prairie Grove on Saturdays to the trades day and try to win $1.
How big a deal was that in those days?
It was a big deal. Everyone from the whole area came to town on Saturday. You could hardly walk up the street from the main street up to the Mock Park where they had the drawing. There were so many people.
What was the downtown area like back then?
About the same as it looks now. I mean, you know, everything's older than it was then, but as well as I can remember, it was about the same.
Were the roads paved?
I think so. 62 was paved, when I remember. And the other roads out in the country were not paved.
What about yard work and other chores y'all did at home?
Just whatever you'd have to do on a farm.
Okay. Tell me more about your earliest memories of coming into Prairie Grove.
My earliest memories is coming in a wagon pulled by a team from the 5 mile that we lived out of town. And it would take long enough for me to have a nap before we got there. So I don't know how long that was, but a while.
And was that mainly on Saturdays, on trades day?
Yeah, yes it was.
What about on Sunday? Did y'all go to church somewhere?
They had church in the schoolhouse at Hubbard on Sundays. And we always had Sunday school. Sometimes we had church if we had a preacher, but sometimes we didn't have a preacher.
A preacher on the circuit?
Well, yeah, someone in the community a part of the time would be, you know, able to preach, and just different ones.
Okay. What did the kids do back in those days when you were young for fun?
Oh, at school we played games, you know, blind man's bluff, tag, and that kind of thing. And in the wintertime we skated on the creek. Muddy Fork Creek started at the top of the mountain between Cove Creek and Prairie Grove, and that's where we skated, was on Muddy Fork Creek. And that was fun. But we wore our shoes out because we didn't have skates, you know.
How have times changed since you were a child?
Too much to even remember all of the change. We had no car as I was, you know, small, and we had no telephones, we had no electricity till like 1940s something we got electricity. And so it was just a different world completely.
What was it like when you first got electricity at home?
Well, we had a light hanging down from the ceiling. And we had a radio which had been battery operated, and it was one you could change over to electric. So we did have a radio, and that was when the World War II started, you know, and my dad was very interested in the news. We got to listen to a few stories, but mainly the news.
What other things did you use electricity for when you first got it?
That was it. Because Mom and Dad didn't even get a refrigerator till after I was married, I think. So we had, you know, just electricity, and that was about it.
When did you move out of the home?
In 1949.
Tell me about it.
Well, maybe it was 48, the winter of 1948. I went to work for the telephone company, Prairie Grove Telephone Company, as soon as I graduated high school in 1948. And I moved that fall to town with Mrs. Allie Armstrong, an old lady that had never been married, and she had a little house down here on Park Street. And Pat Fennell, a girl that I knew from out Hogeye area, we had one room there that we lived in, and I worked at the telephone company, and Pat worked at the Carmen Drug Store, I think it was. And we lived there through the winter because Mother didn't want me driving into town, you know. The road was unpaved at that time, and so that was what we did.
Tell me about working at the phone company. What was it like in those early days?
Very primitive. Wanda Allen's mother worked there at the same time, and we just answered the switchboard and rang numbers for people because we had no, you know, that was the only way you could call someone. You had to dial the operator, or not dial, you had to ring. It was the magneto system, the old wall telephones, and the ringer, yes. And when someone wanted to make a long distance call, we had to call Southwestern Bell and place the call, and then wait for them to get the party on the line, call us back, and we called our party here, and they got on the line then.
How long would that take?
Depended on different things, sometimes quite a while. But we had some people that got pretty perturbed of us, you know, when we couldn't get their phone calls in right away.
How would you bill the customers? Would you keep track of the time or write down the names, or how'd that work?
We had a ticket that we filled out for each long distance call. We had a ticket that we filled out with the time, the name of the person, and the time and everything. And then I worked in the office filling those, filing those, and then once a month I helped send out the statements and everything. So Mr. Jim Parks was there, and he and I did all of that.
How long did you work for the phone company?
Well, from when I went to work in 1948 until my daughter was born in July of 1952, and I wasn't working when she was born, so I don't remember exact date, but anyway, about that time.
So, how long did people use the phone very much in those days compared to now?
Heavens, no.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, no one made long distance calls hardly ever unless it was necessary. They were expensive, you know. And and they didn't do a lot of talking in the community. If they wanted to call Luganbuell's funeral home or Dr. Mock's clinic or the grocery stores or something like that, they would use the phone. And I guess a few people did talk, but on those party lines it was kind of hard to get the line sometimes because someone else was talking.
How many people would be on the same party line most of the time in those days?
Gosh, anywhere from 7 or 8 to 15, I guess. I don't know, there was lots of them. They were called farmers' lines. The people owned the line themselves and paid rent for just the service of having it.
Tell me about going to school.
Well, I went to school at Hubbard, the school there where I was born, right close to it, through the 8th grade, because it was a one-room schoolhouse with one teacher and probably 30 students, something like that, worked 1st through 8th grade. Then when I graduated 8th grade, I came to Prairie Grove, had to walk about 1.5 miles to catch a bus into Prairie Grove, and then they consolidated with Prairie Grove, and the bus came closer. I didn't have to walk that far the last 2 years, and I graduated in 1948.
What was your school building like in those days?
The one at Hubbard was one room, just one room, and we had no electricity when I started there. We had no water. We had to walk down the road and get a bucket of water and bring it to school, and we had outdoor toilets, and you know, it was very primitive. But then when I started to high school, it was a little more, you know, we did have electricity, but we still had an outdoor toilet at Prairie Grove when I started there. So it was different to what it is now.
What did the school building look like?
At Prairie Grove, it was 3-story brick, and well, it was getting old by that time, but it was still okay. We had, I don't think we were using the top story actually at that time. It was kind of getting dilapidated. But anyway, they finally tore it down. I don't remember what year, but.
Tell me about what it was like going to school at Prairie Grove when you moved up here and they consolidated.
Oh, those people from the north side of town kind of looked down on us. No, I'm being, Wanda Allen lived north of town, so I'm saying that for her benefit. But it was good. I mean, it was a good place.
How big were your classes?
Goodness, I don't know, probably 10, 12 people. I can't remember, really. Mrs. Holmes was the main teacher I remember, and she could tell you about things.
Tell me more about her. What was she like?
Well, she was a tall, slender lady, and her husband was the mayor of Prairie Grove, Mr. Holmes was, and she tried to be strict, but the kids didn't pay a lot of attention to her sometimes, you know. But she was a good teacher. I think she taught English, I believe.
Well, how would the teachers and the principal discipline children in those days?
When I went to school at Hubbard, they spanked them. And I don't know when I went to Prairie Grove, I don't know if they spanked them. Maybe they did, I don't know. But just try to make them behave themselves as best they could.
When you were going to school, what were some of the activities y'all did for fun and for entertainment?
Walked downtown and got a hamburger and a Coke if you had a dime at the lunch hour, because we didn't have a lunchroom when I first started at Prairie Grove. And then we would play basketball on the dirt court, and the boys, well, some of the girls played baseball, maybe, or softball, but I never did. And the boys played baseball, and just, you know, whatever we could do.
Tell me about some of the businesses in Prairie Grove at that
Well,
time.
we had lots of businesses in Prairie Grove then. The Southern Mercantile, you know, they had all 3 departments: grocery, hardware, and dry goods. And then we had 3 or 4 more grocery stores. I remember, oh goodness, and the meat market, and then there was another, the dime store, the Harlan's Variety Store, which was a dime store. We had that. Had the jewelry store. Herschel Clark had the jewelry store. Dixon Saddlery, and there was several different cafes. I can't remember all of them. The Eat Shop was where we usually get our hamburgers and so forth. There were several places that I can't really remember.
When did you get married and have kids? Let's talk about that.
Well, we got married in October of 1949. We moved down here on Mock Street in 2 rooms of the house that's still down there where the Green family lived. We lived there, let's see, we got married in October 49, and our daughter was born in July of 1952, and then we moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and spent 8 years out there before we came back and bought the farm, where I'm still there.
Tell me about your farm.
Well, just 200-acre farm out here past Center Point, about 4 miles from here, and I've been there since 1960. And we grew chickens. We had chicken houses at one time for about 18 years, and then we milked cows and then quit that and started just cattle, selling at sale barns such as that.
So what did your husband do?
He was a carpenter, an electrician, an auctioneer, just a farmer and all of that.
What was his name?
Earl Rieff.
Earl Rieff. And your sons?
I have Randall is my oldest son. Well, Janice is my oldest child is Janice, my daughter. Her name is Janice Langrel. And then I have Randall Rieff is my oldest son, and then Tracy Rieff is my youngest son. And they all live in this area. Janice lives up on the farm up there. They have a home up there.
When they were growing up, what would your kids do on the farm to help?
Oh, everything. We actually was not milking at that time, but they helped raise chickens. We raised the youngest one in the chicken house. That's why he got so big. But don't tell him I said that. But anyway, they did all of it, just whatever was necessary.
So they grew up working on the farm,
Oh,
just
yes,
like you
yes,
did?
yes. Mm-hmm.
What was life on the farm like in those days?
Oh, it was good. It was a good life. And we, just did like everyone else. We'd go visiting and go to church and just anything that, like families would do.
When you and your husband were living in Prairie Grove and raising your kids, what would the kids do for fun in those days?
Well, we didn't live in Prairie Grove.
I mean, outside of town,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
south of Prairie Grove.
Goodness, they fished, and we had ponds, and they fished, and they went swimming in the summertime, and just like all the other kids did, I guess, visited back and forth.
What did adults do for fun, for social activities back in the 60s and 70s?
We would go to a drive-in theater occasionally and take the whole family, and then we would play cards with other couples and just visit and all that stuff.
What are some of the best memories you can think of about Prairie Grove, or some of the stories you could tell about Prairie Grove and the people of Prairie Grove?
Well, I've known lots of people in Prairie Grove. I don't know as many anymore because there's so many people that were not native here. They've come in the last several years. But I've always enjoyed everyone, and I've enjoyed the senior center immensely because I've been coming here over 10 years, and it's been a good place. And I go to church at New Sulphur, which is out in the area there, and just know a lot of people and enjoy people.
What about the Battlefield Park? Did you guys go to there much?
Yes, sir, we did. They had what they call the old time reunion, the old from Civil War. That's the way it started. They called it that. And then in my years, they had a carnival up there once a year. Not the clothesline fair, but just a reunion, they called it. But there would be a carnival there, and then. Of course, another thing, it was a good place to park when you were out with your boyfriend,
That was where everybody went?
Everybody, it would be full. It would be full of cars around.
What years would that have been in?
Oh, in my high school years, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you remember about how the park has changed over the years, how it's gotten bigger? And
the Battlefield Park?
Yes.
Well, whenever I was growing up there was just that one pavilion, that rock pavilion was the only thing there was there. None of those other buildings were there then. So it was just an area, woodland all around it. There was just a drive, kind of a circle drive through there around the pavilion. And that was about all there was there. It was a nice place, and people would still go up there and picnic and stuff, even though there wasn't any other, like the Battlefield, any of those things that are there now.
If you met somebody and they said, "What could you tell me about your town of Prairie Grove?" what would be some of the things you would tell them about Prairie Grove?
Goodness, I don't know. It's been a good place for me to live. I guess it would be for anyone.
Why is it a good place to live?
Well, it was a good place for my kids to grow up, and it's just been a good area. I've enjoyed it.
and this may be a little personal, but I know the community really responded earlier a couple of years ago when your husband was or your son was having some medical problems.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you feel comfortable talking about?
Well, it was a miracle because, you know, when they did the surgery that night, the doctor actually didn't give us much hopes that he would survive. And he was very sick, and he was in the intensive care there for weeks. I can't remember exactly how long. But yeah, it was wonderful. People were so good, you know, really. It was
What were
great.
some of the things people did?
Oh, goodness. They brought food up there for the family. Of course, there was a bunch up there every day and night, you know, and there was food brought in every day, enough for a big meal every evening. And we, out in the waiting room, we ate. So it was a sad time, but we had some good people to help us out, so that was good. And so thankful that it turned out like it did, for sure.